Hello and welcome to Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Roberts, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. Let's take a look at the headlines.
Fracture in his right thumb.
President Buhari decorates newly promoted Commander, Brigade of Guards. National Assembly passes Finance Bill. Plus, Turkey, Syria, Russia defense ministers hold talks in Moscow. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First in our news tonight, is a report that President Muhammad Buhari today heaped praises on the newly promoted Commander, Brigade of Guards, Major General Muhammad Usman, describing him as an outstanding officer who serves the nation with great zeal. The President, assisted by the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, and the wife of the Commander, Rakia Usman, decorated the officer with the rank of Major General. Speaking after the ceremony in the presidential villa, the president recalled his military career marked with coups, counter-coups, and attention, describing General Usman as a lucky officer to have risen to the height of his military career with distinction and without hiccups. He commended General Usman for his diligence, loyalty, patience, and hard work. Meanwhile, with barely 8 weeks to the 2023 presidential elections, President Muhammad Buhari has warned security agencies to eschew behaviors that could compromise the democratic process. The president gave the charge when he inaugurated the Defense Intelligence Agency's newly acquired estate in Idukamo, Abuja. He urged those involved. President Buhari urged the military and other security agencies to remain apolitical in their involvement in the provision of security during the elections. In the meantime, President Buhari has received a briefing from the newly appointed chairman of the board of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, Loretta Onochie. The meeting, which took place at the State House, marked Onochie's first visit to President Buhari since her nomination was confirmed last week. Recall that the Senate had approved Onochie's nomination alongside those of 12 others to serve as members of the NDDC board. Both the Senate and House of Representatives committees on Niger Delta had screened Onochie and 13 others for the NDDC board roles on December 15. In education, the Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, says the National Business and Technical Exam Minister noted that the results were not only valid but also usable for admission to tertiary institutions. This information is contained in the official bulletin of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, where JAM reminded all institutions that the results were usable for admission. According to the information, candidates who had used the NABTEB GCE A-level results of 2015 through 2021 to secure admission to higher institutions of learning are to continue with their studies, as the certificate will soon announce salary increments for civil servants and public officials due to the steady increase in consumer goods. It also said a presidential committee was currently reviewing salaries with a plan to announce its decision in the early months of 2023. Minister of Labour and Employment Chris Ngige gave the assurance to State House correspondents after a closed-door meeting with President Muhammad Buhari at the ASU Rock Villa, Abuja. Citing throwbacks to the strike by ASU, sister unions and medical practitioners earlier in the year, the disagreements. To the legislature now, where the National Assembly has passed the finance bill, which proposes reforms to specific taxation, customs, excise, and fiscal laws. The bill amends several laws, namely the Capital Gains Tax Act, Companies Income Tax Act, Personal Income Tax Act, Petroleum Profits Tax Act, as well as Stamp Duties Act, Value Added Tax, and Public Procurement Act. Is intended to enhance tax equity by bringing more economic sectors into the tax net and ensuring fairer distribution of revenue receipts to all tiers of government. The Finance Bill seeks to change the name of the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) to Nigeria Revenue Service. The board is to be headed by a chairman who is separate from the management, and the management will be headed by a chief executive who will be known as the Commissioner General. Still on legislative matters, the Senate today passed the 2022 supplementary budget of 819.5 billion naira. President Muhammadu Buhari had sought the passage of supplementary budget to be financed through additional domestic borrowing. The supplementary budget is to address food security following devastating floods across the country, as well as damages to road infrastructure, and worth 17 trillion naira. In a related development, the Senate has extended the implementation of the 2022 capital budget till March 31, 2023. This followed the consideration and passage of a bill for an act to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act in order to extend the implementation year from December 31, 2022 to March 31, 2023, and for related matters 2022. The Senate, however, suspended its Standing Order 70 to enable it read the bill for the first, second, and third time before its passage. The executive bill was sponsored by the Senate leader Ibrahim Gobe. He said it became necessary to extend the implementation of the capital appropriation for 2022 in order to allow for the completion of ongoing projects. Gobe said the development followed a delay in the release of funds for the implementation of the capital component of the 2022 budget. Earlier, the Senate President Ahmed Lawan had read a letter by President Muhammadu Buhari seeking to extend the date for the implementation. In the meantime, Senate has urged the Central Bank of Nigeria to extend its deadline for the phasing out of the old 1,500 and 200 naira notes from January 31 to June 31, 2023. The recommendation follows a motion by the senator representing Borno South, Ali Dume, raising the alarm over the January 31 deadline. According to Dume, the notice given by the CBN is too short, considering the few banks in Borno and Yobe states and the inability of people in those states to lodge the old notes in time to meet the deadline. Recall that the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, had on October 26, 2022, announced the redesign of the 3 banknotes, saying the new and existing currencies will remain legal tendered cash in circulation and therefore restrict the deplorable activities of ransom-demanding kidnappers as well as politicians set on rigging the upcoming elections. Still with the legislature, Senate will resume its 2023 plenary on January 17 after today's session. Senate President Ahmed Lawan announced this during today's He Advances request. The parliamentarians stepped down the restructuring of the 22.7 trillion naira Ways and Means request until more documents were presented to the Senate for further legislative action. To the lower chamber now, where the House of Representatives has passed the 2023 appropriation bill, raising the total estimates from the proposed 20.5 trillion naira to 21.8 trillion naira. Passage of the federal government budget followed the consideration and adoption of the report by the House Committee on Appropriations on the bill at the plenary today. The report came on a supplementary order paper, which was later issued during the session. Meanwhile, House of Representatives has passed a resolution to investigate the circumstances that led to the killing of Barrister Bolanle Rahim by a police officer in Lagos. The lawyer was reportedly shot and continued to react to the incident, lamenting the incessant killing and unprofessionalism by some police officers in the country. At today's plenary, the House of Representatives resolved to ensure that the officer involved was prosecuted with a view to getting justice and stopping officers from taking alcohol while on duty. The motion for the resolution was moved by a member representing Etiosa Federal Constituency, Lagos State, Ibrahim Obanikoro. Reports say the House earlier observed a minute's silence for the deceased. In politics now, Independent National Electoral Commission has taken the campaign for the collection of permanent voter cards to Calabar Carnival in Cross River State. Addressing the members of staff of the commission in Calabar today before the commencement of the carnival, the National Commission of the Voter Education, Festus Okoye, said INEC had reached a critical stage in its preparation for the 2023 elections. He noted that organizing a credible election was a shared responsibility, adding that it was time for Nigeria to achieve the freest election on the African continent. On security, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, has recommended the immediate suspension of Assistant Superintendent of Police Drambi Vandi, the officer allegedly responsible for the shooting and killing of Barrister Omobolanle Rahim, while waiting for the detailed report on the incident. The IGP noted that the recommendation for the suspension of the officer was in line with the internal disciplinary, that the suspension was expected to create an enabling environment for necessary legal procedures to uphold justice in the case without interference. He explained that the suspension was without prejudice to the constitutional presumption of innocence in favor of the officer. In the meantime, the chairman of Etiosa East Local Council Development Area, John Campos, has directed the naming of a street in the area after the slain 41-year-old lawyer Bolanle sympathizers. The husband of the deceased lawyer Benga Rahim appealed for calm, saying nothing could bring back his wife. Recall that the late Rahim was allegedly shot by a cop on Christmas Day while trying to make a U-turn at the Ajah Bridge. In another development, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency has arrested 18,940 suspects for different drug-related offenses in the past 2 years. The chairman of the agency, Brigadier General Mohammed Marwa, stated this at an award presentation in Yola. 4 kilograms of different controlled drugs and narcotic substances, as well as rehabilitated 3,326 drug abusers within the period under review. Away from that now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has concluded plans to conduct sales of properties that are subjects of final forfeiture orders. According to the Commission, interested persons or organizations have until noon of Monday, January 9, 2023 to submit their bids. The EFCC spokesperson Wilson Owujarin announced this in a statement. Back here, some residents of Akwa Ibom State are lamenting the high costs of transportation, saying the situation has dampened the spirit of Christmas and New Year celebrations. Speaking with Spectrum Television, the people also decried the cost of food items and other things caused by the hike in fuel prices. A correspondent completes the report.
Invariably raised. The hike in the price of premium motor spirits, popularly called petrol, is no longer news. While some fuel stations within Uyo metropolis were shut during the holidays, others were selling between 270 to 350 naira a litre. This has invariably raised the cost of transportation, not just within Uyo metropolis, but for people traveling to spend the festivities with their families. A lot of residents who spoke with Spectrum Television lamented how the high cost of transportation, coupled with low purchasing power, has marred their celebrations this year.
I noticed that things are very expensive here. The economic is so bad. There is no money. Bag of rice 46,000. Long grain. Why in Abuja you can't get it like that? It's more cheaper. I noticed that things are very cheaper in northern side than our eastern side. Before a plaza, now it's 100 naira.
Things are very, very high. They say fuel is fuel. They are buying fuel in the cost of 250 naira per litre. And now, we used to pay transport 15 naira. Now there's no more 15 naira transport.
Travelers and motorists are not left out. According to them, The passengers are finding it difficult to pay the stipulated amount per drop, and this in turn affects their source of livelihood.
The fuel price is too high. We are buying fuel 200 and so much lamenting about it. So the government should look into it. The passengers are not complying this.
When fuel was between the rate of 165 and 170, we were convenient. It was convenient for us to convey people at 15 naira per drop. But by the time the fuel was increased from 170 to 200, we couldn't bear that again. We had to hike our own fare to 100 naira per drop, though depending on the distance. But now that the fuel is to convey people at 50 naira per drop, anymore, even at that.
Although it is the season to be merry, the merriment for some have been marred by the economic realities in the country. They are calling on the government to sort out the issues causing the increase in the price of petrol, which will invariably reduce the cost of transportation and other commodities, especially during the festivities. Edidion Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television.
Still to come in the news.
Has been diagnosed with an
sues EU in move to block new windfall tax on oil companies. To stay with us.
Washington Wizard.
Every day, we bring you up-to-date information on topical issues affecting the common Nigerian. From issues on politics,
hello Nigeria, I remain committed.
Security, AM to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Many thanks for staying tuned. We move on now to Africa, where families today embraced and wept in emotional reunions after the first commercial flight in 18 months between Ethiopia's capital city and the war-torn Tigray region in the north. The return of flights between Addis Ababa and Tigray's capital Mekelle follows a ceasefire between government and in Africa announced this week that it would lift its suspension on flights to Tigray, with the first charter to the region since June 2021. Today, passengers arriving from Mekelle were reportedly greeted by relatives at Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa with long embraces, flowers, and tears. Still in Africa, a court in Ivory Coast has handed down life terms to 4 men convicted of abetting a jihadist attack on a resort that left found the 4 guilty of the deeds for which they were accused and sentenced them to life imprisonment. The March 13, 2016 assault was the first jihadist attack in Ivory Coast, which is one of West Africa's economic powerhouses. 3 men wielding assault rifles stormed the beach at grounds and restaurants. The 45-minute bloodbath ended when Ivorian security forces shot dead the 3 attackers. The 19 people killed comprised 9 Ivorians, 4 French citizens, a Lebanese, a German, a Macedonian, a Malian, a Nigerian, and a person who could not be identified. Turkish experts say 2022 was set to be the UK's warmest on record after a year of several heat waves alongside minimal rainfall. In a statement, the Met Office, the UK's meteorological authority, said this year had the highest annual average temperature across the country. The office noted that the temperatures exceeded the previous record set in 2014. Foreign scene, the defense ministers of Russia, Turkey and Syria have held talks in Moscow in a sign of normalization between Ankara and Damascus in the decade-long Syrian war. Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar and the head of its national intelligence organization Hakan Fidan met Syrian Defense Minister Ali Abbas and Syrian intelligence chief Ali Mamluk in Moscow, along with Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. The Russian Defense Ministry said ways of resolving the Syrian crisis, the problem of refugees, and the joint efforts to combat extremist groups in Syria had been discussed. The ministry said the Turkish, Russian, and Syrian in Syria and in the region as a whole. Elsewhere, Ukraine has bought 1,400 drones, mostly for reconnaissance. Kiev is also planning to develop combat models that can attack the exploding drones which Russia used during its invasion of Ukraine. This is according to the Ukrainian Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorov. He credited drones and satellite internet systems like Elon Musk's Starlink with having transformed the conflict. Ukraine has purchased drones like the Fly-Eye, a small unmanned aerial vehicle used for intelligence, battlefield surveillance, and reconnaissance. In the meantime, air raid sirens today sounded across all of Ukraine's regions. Officials reported the development on Ukrainian social media platforms. The report said the nationwide alert may have been declared after Russian jets stationed in Belarus took off. In a related development, the Kremlin is demanding that peace proposals to end the conflict in Ukraine be taken into account, what it called the new reality of 4 Ukrainian regions having joined Russia. It could be recalled that Russia had declared Ukraine's Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia as part of its territory in September. This followed referendums. Meanwhile, French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu says on his first trip to Kiev that Paris wants to work with Ukraine to find a common agenda on how France can support the war effort. Lecornu said at a press conference with his Ukrainian counterpart Alexei Reznikov that Presidents Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron had requested proposals for a common agenda on French military support for January. The French defense minister said he discussed the tactical and strategic situation on the ground and the needs of the Ukrainian army in the weeks to come with Reznikov. To more developments from the war in Ukraine, Russia has expelled a Lithuanian diplomat, Jogita Kibolskini, and ordered him to leave the country within 5 days. A Russian Foreign Ministry statement said Sibolskine had been summoned to the Russian Foreign Ministry and given the directive to leave the territory of the Federation. The statement added that the Lithuanian side protested in connection with the expulsion of an employee of the Russian embassy in Vilnius. It could be recalled that on December 1, the Lithuanian Foreign Ministry had said a Russian embassy employee was declared persona non grata due to activities incompatible with his diplomatic status. Away from that, Supreme Leader of North Korea Kim Jong-un has announced new goals for the country's military in a report to party leaders. This hints on the continuation of sanctions, bursting weapons tests. The senior party officials outlined their policy goals for 2023 in key areas including diplomacy, security, and the economy. Kim set forth new goals for bolstering up the defense capability to be pushed ahead in 2023, citing the recent sharp escalation in tensions between North Korea on improving its defenses against drones. The country's defense ministry confirmed the plan today after a military scare from the north that set up jitters in Seoul. Recall that on Monday, 5 North Korean drones had entered the South's airspace, prompting the military to scramble fighter jets and attack helicopters. President Yoon Suk-yeol and an apology from the military. It was reportedly the first time a North Korean drone has entered South Korean airspace since the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Pact. Under South Korea's newly unveiled budget, the country aims to spend 331.4 trillion won in all on defense until 2027, with an average annual increase of 6.8%. Today, Suk-yeol said any provocation by North Korea should be met with retaliation without hesitation, despite its nuclear weapons. Elsewhere, Kosovo has closed its biggest border crossing after protesters blocked it on the Serbian side to support their ethnic kin in Kosovo in refusing to recognize the country's independence. Today's move has left only 3 entry points between the two countries open, with 2 other crossings on the Serbian border closed by similar protests on their Kosovo sides since December 10. The latest protests came hours after Serbia said it had put its army on the highest possible level of alert. Serbia had used a truck and tractors yesterday to create the latest roadblock close to the Madare crossing on Kosovo's eastern border. The obstruction is preventing thousands of Kosovars who work elsewhere in Europe from returning home from holidays. In another development, Saudi Arabia has seized nearly 30 tons of the mildly narcotic shrub khat this month as part of a larger drug crackdown by the oil-rich kingdom. Khat, or quat, is a leaf which is packed into the cheek and slowly chewed, releasing chemicals similar to amphetamines. Somalia. Saudi border authorities say they had seized 29.2 tons of khat in the country's south, near the border with Yemen, as well as in the north near Jordan. They noted that the shipments were seized between December 3 and 24. The authorities said more than 360 smugglers were arrested, most of them Yemeni, but also some Ethiopian. Heavy rains and resulting flooding over the weekend. But this brings the death toll to 29. The authorities announced this in an update citing the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. On the Vatican, Pope Francis says his predecessor, the 95-year-old former pontiff Pope Benedict, who resigned from the post 9 years ago, is very sick after a deterioration in his health. During his general audience at the Vatican today, Francis a deterioration due to the advancement of Benedict's age. Recall that in 2013, Pope Benedict XVI shocked the world by making the almost unprecedented decision to resign from his position, citing advanced age. On our business news now, the Standards Organization of Nigeria, SON, has sensitized manufacturers, consumers and other stakeholders on the need line with its mandate and vision of ensuring that all goods built locally, manufactured or imported conformed to the relevant industrial standards. Speaking at an event in Asaba, Delta State, the senior special assistant to the Director General of SON, Emeka Duru, pointed out that the group had organized the sensitization forum to facilitate trade and enhance the economy. Still in business now, the Nigeria Digital Identification for Development Project has partnered the National Orientation Agency to drive awareness among Nigerians in February next year. A statement via the manager of external communication, Mokta Adamu, confirmed the development In a statement, Adamu reiterated the project's goal of increasing the number of persons in the country with NIN. It noted that the project was also looking to upgrade infrastructure at the National Identity Management Commission so as to be able to enroll up to 250 million persons in marginalized and hard-to-reach communities during the project's life cycle. Elsewhere, U.S. oil groups arguing that Brussels exceeded its legal authority by imposing the levy. Exxon spokesperson Cassie Norton said the windfall profits tax was counterproductive, discouraged investments, and undermined investor confidence. He said ExxonMobil will factor in the tax as it considers future multi-billion. In another development, ship insurers are cancelling war risk cover across Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus following an exit from the region by reinsurers in the face of steep losses. Reinsurers who insure the insurers typically renew their 12-month contracts with insurance clients on January 1. This gives them the first opportunity to scale back exposure since the war in Ukraine started, after being hit this year by losses related to the conflict and from Hurricane Ian in Florida. Protection and Indemnity P&I clubs American, North, UK, and West said they were no longer able to offer war risk cover for liabilities in the region. The clubs are among the biggest P&I insurers who cover around 90%. Chelsea and England defender James out for up to 4 weeks with knee injury. Do stay with us.
That's a bonus is not
On topical issues affecting the common Nigeria, from issues on politics,
Hello, Nigeria. I remain committed.
security, like every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television.
That Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now in health, Nigeria's Center for Disease Control (NCDC) says a total of 583 deaths have been recorded from cholera, while 23,550 cases were confirmed. The report showed that the suspected cases were reported across 270 local government areas in 33 states. In Nigeria, cholera is an endemic and seasonal disease occurring annually, mostly during the rainy season and more often in areas with poor sanitation. So in health, following reported cases of the resurgence of Ebola and other communicable diseases, the Federal Capital Territory Administration has tightened its disease surveillance system to minimize its impact on the territory. The director of the FCT Public Health Department, Dr. Sadiq Abdurrahman, made this known while Briefing-Logical Division of the Public Health Department had been placed on red alert under the supervision of the FCT Health and Human Services Secretariat. In another development, Italy has ordered COVID-19 antigen swabs and virus sequencing for all travelers coming from China, where cases are surging. The Italian health minister confirmed this today. Italy, which was the first nation in Europe to be hit hard by the virus in February 2020, after with a new wave. According to reports, Milan's main airport, Malpensa, had already started testing passengers arriving from Beijing and Shanghai on December 26, and the results showed almost 1 in 2 passengers was infected. The local health chiefs in the Lombardy region around Milan and the Lazio region around Rome said the travelers testing positive would have to quarantine in buildings set aside by the authorities. Let's head over now to Bright James for trending sports stories.
Thank you, Xavier Roberts. Good evening and welcome to the Sports Desk. I am Bright James. In football, on the payment of the outstanding indemnities. Now, according to reports, the Nigerian Referees Association (NRA) has told the Interim Management Committee (IMC) that their members won't officiate games in the upcoming season unless their 3 years accumulated indemnities arrears were paid. The decision of the match officials earlier forced the IMC to postpone the kickoff date from December 28 to January 8. There have been a series of meetings between the NRA and the IMC to resolve the issue, but the former has insisted on the full payment of the indemnities before returning to the field of play with their whistles. Now to Europe, where Manchester United boss Erik ten Hag told the club he is frustrated they could not secure the signing of Cody Gakpo, but remains hopeful a short-term replacement for Cristiano Ronaldo can still be found in January. Gakpo's imminent transfer to Liverpool did not come as a surprise to ten Hag, who shares an agent with the PSV at Old Trafford. Now, according to sources, United did not launch an official bid for Gakpo because they could not match the financial package offered by Liverpool. Ten Hag is sympathetic to the budget's constraints at United after a larger than expected outlay during the summer, but has asked the club to assess short-term options to fill the void left by Ronaldo, who agreed a mutual termination of his contract during the break for the World Cup. With very little money available for a transfer fee, United are looking at short-term loan deals until the end of the season. Said earlier in the day, Mesut 35 was the linchpin of the Argentine side that won the World Cup in Qatar 9 days ago, scoring twice in the final against France, which finished in the penalty shootout victory. He then returned to Argentina with his teammates to celebrate their third World Cup triumph. Christoph Gattler said, and I quote, "Leo had a very big World Cup with his victory." Gattler on the eve of Marchet Chirro possibly making his return at home against Angers on January 11th. He's also expected to sit down with the PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi and other top club officials to pay a one-year season extension to his current deal in the French capital, which expires in the summer. Finally, from transfers, Nigerian duo Denisi and Wasiu Jimo are close to finalizing their move to Zambian Premier League club Zesco United. Jimo, who is moving to Zesco United from MPFL side Kwara United, according to reports, arrived Lusaka on Tuesday to sign his contract in Lusaka today. The 26-year-old, who can also play in midfield, was part of Nigeria's under-17 side that conquered the world in the United Arab Emirates in 2013. He's coming as a replacement for Sudanese defender Peter Mayang, who has been released by the club. And that's all we have time for you from the Sports Desk this evening. I am Bright James. Thanks for...
Hey, thanks, Bright. Now on our entertainment news, the grandson of reggae legend Bob Marley and son of Grammy Award-winning musician Stephen Marley and a well-regarded reggae artist in his own right, Joseph Joe Mercer Marley, has died at 31. A representative of Jamaican-born Marley confirmed his death, but did not give a cause. Reports, however, say he was found in a vehicle after suffering an asthma attack. In a tweet, Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness called Marley's passing a huge loss to music as the world looked to the next generation and offered his condolences to Marley's parents. It up with Eternal in 2021 and is reportedly survived by a wife and daughter. And finally, on entertainment, English actor and comedian John Bird has died at 86. His representatives confirmed the death in a statement. Bird was part of the TV satire boom of the 1960s and was well known for his appearances opposite John Fortune. The pair memorably appeared alongside Rory, describing him as modest and self-effacing and one of the greatest satirists. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 9. My name is Xavier Robert, wishing you a terrific night rest. Bye-bye for now.